Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
So now I just get a little hand wave.
Yeah, we're trying to take the melodrama out of the opening. We're trying to, we want to just be professional and serious.
That's right. That's what we are. We're professional.
However,
we're serious.
In that spirit, I have to say that
I
forgot to put my belt on, so I'm gonna have to pull my pants up every 2 minutes.
Lord.
So I hope that doesn't wreck the professionalism.
Okay, be praying, folks. I hope it doesn't wreck the professionalism. This is the downside to the glorious standing desk, because you're
right.
Standing there, you're feeling things slide down. I'm gonna need you, keep your eyes up here, folks. Keep your eyes up here. Not see what's going on. But Dan, I have to confess, I am highly distracted by something in your background. Okay. You have a clock behind you on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the right time. Or are you one of those that sets it, 7 minutes ahead?
No, that clock is right twice a day. That's
at that time.
Right, time, right now is not the time that it's right. Yes. Yeah, the battery died like 6 years ago, and I haven't really changed it. Here's the other thing. I'll say this. Is it goes tick, 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 tick. And I'm like, oh, shut up. I don't it gets to me. So I'm like, just leave it. It's a nice looking clock though.
It's a nice looking clock.
I like the idea. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of time, and I like the idea of being on time and being oriented to the world. Mm-hmm. But in reality, I tend to not be well oriented to the world.
So. Yeah. Well, it's overrated. Being well oriented. It's overrated. I was going to just ever so professionally transition us into Sunday sermon from Greg. And then, as is typical Shawna fashion, I forgot the title. Something imperishable, right?
Yep. You're on the right track.
Okay. That's all I got.
Do you think the title is something imperishable? Something imperishable. That's it is the imperishable
God
treasure.
Oh my Lord.
What did you like, the imperishable cheese sandwich? I mean, what were you thinking?
I mean, I like a good cheese nacho plate, some good cheese enchiladas, a Whataburger taquito. I like all those things to be imperishable.
A Whataburger taquito. I have no idea what that is. Is that a Texas thing?
It's the South. Like I could get to Kansas City, and that would be where I would encounter my first Whataburger. And the dreams that I have of going to Whataburger. Mr. Green, you will testify to this later on in the chat. It's a heaven like no other, and I miss it. I can't get it up here. Anyway, I don't know how we got into all that, but the imperishable treasure, not a Whataburger taquito, is what we are talking about today. That Greg took us through. We are just breezing through Revelation, man.
Right.
We're just rolling.
Yeah. My hair is sticking up from the wind. That's
I wasn't gonna say anything, but
hey, I'm actually getting it cut today. So
I was gonna say that must mean it's haircut time.
It is. By the time we are chatting about this MuseCast, I'll be much shorter on top. So
freshly shorn and looking dapper, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. Awesome.
Are we ready?
I'm ready for that summary, man. Let's get after it.
Let me adjust all my beverages here so I don't knock them over. Okay.
Pull up your pants, adjust your beverages.
Hold on. Let me make sure my pants are up. There you go. Okay. The imperishable treasure. Now it's time to get serious. We are talking about Revelation chapter 4, and we are going to start leaning into 5, and he's already sort of reaching in there a couple times, but we're mostly still focused on chapter 4, which is this throne room, and in the throne room, of course, there's all of these images that kind of denote, I don't know if it's denote or connote, I have to look that up, but they imply like wealth and treasure and reward and thrones and jewels and crowns and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's sort of the chapter that we're on. This is talking about God's transcendence, his otherness, his holiness, and all of these people in this, and creatures in this throne room are just like wowed by God's majesty and beauty and all of that. And so what Greg is looking at in particular this week is what is the nature of these treasures. And what he is going to ultimately argue is that the ultimate treasure, and I'm just going to cut right to the chase, get to the meat of what he's saying. The ultimate treasure is this dynamic relationship with God. It's this dance with the triune God. It's this living and moving and interacting with the creator of everything, with the source of all beauty, the source of all power, the source of all love. Everything good in our lives comes from this being that makes everything real, and we get to share in that, in this very dynamic living sort of dance. That's the ultimate goal. That's but within that, God gives us all of these gifts, and he gives us all of these things that we can participate with, and we can play with, and we can live with, and all of that kind of stuff. And there are other creatures besides us. There's these animals, there's other humans, there's on the spiritual level, there's more life. I mean, this is a living God, and he creates a living creation, and we're part of that. But what can happen is we are born into this world, and we can sort of become fixated by the world itself, by these other things that God has created. And what can happen is we can set our hearts on the things of this world, and not even recognize that there's got to be a source for all of these things. And we can set our hearts. And when I say set our hearts, I mean like put our hope, consider the things in this world as what's the ultimately good, the best thing that we can have are these things in this world. And that's tragic, because what we know about the world and what we know about the universe and creation is that it's a closed system, and it's a closed system that is decaying. And we can make a shiny jewel, but it just doesn't last. And eventually all of this, it's a ticking time bomb. There's only so much that this world, this universe can give us, and it's all going to be gone. And of course, we won't even see the end of it, because we ourselves are in these vessels that are also decaying and dying and falling apart, and we're going to go away. We're going to be gone. And so we're here for just a short moment. And during that moment, what I think the point of Greg's message is we have to be careful not to get hypnotized by the things of this world, and to not put our hearts and to invest our hearts in the things of this world, but to recognize that there is this other source of all of this that is everlasting, that was and is to come. And that is where we should put our heart. That's where we should invest ourselves into. And God invites us to put our hearts in him, and to trust in him. And so Greg, then with that in mind, in looking at how, like, even things like, the United States of America, this is the greatest country in the world, and all of our wealth and our technology and all of these things, it's not going to last forever. Everything comes to an end. All empires come to an end. And so with that as sort of the backdrop, Greg gives us these three sort of takeaways, or three things to meditate on. The first one is this kind of command to don't set your heart on perishable things. And that's sort of what I've been talking about. Because what happens is when we set our hearts on these things that are perishable, that they're not going to last, well, now suddenly they become way more valuable to us than they should be. And when they're that valuable to us, we're constantly anxious about it. And when it's threatened, we become threatened. And when it starts to fade away, our joy starts to fade away. And so that's the dangers of making these perishable things as our treasure. Instead, number 2, he says that we should store up treasures in heaven. And this is where we encounter things that do not perish. We encounter things that are everlasting because they are parts of what God made us to be, and they are dimensions of God and God's self. And so things like learning to love and learning to experience the joy of God and to live in the reality of God's love for us, and things like that were these everlasting sort of treasures. And then the final point that Greg makes is that we need to stay anchored in hope. We can't put our hope in the things in this world either, because by definition, a finite universe of perishable things cannot provide any ultimate hope. And looking at the world, looking at the government, looking at the military, looking at nutrition, looking at whatever else that we're chasing, if it comes from the perishable world, it can't possibly offer us ultimate hope. The best it can do is offer us short-term relief. And so what Greg is arguing is that God invites us into something that is lasting, something that you can justify your hope, and that is a relationship, a covenant relationship with God, and to pursue this perichoretic dance is what Greg calls it. And then he sort of concluded with an exercise where he invited us to kind of meditate on our own lives and in the things that we might have put our hearts in, invested our hearts in, that maybe we should reconsider. And that is my summary of Greg's sermon, The Imperishable Cheese Sandwich. Treasure. Imperishable treasure. So
Whataburger to keto. Yes, the imperishable treasure. This is normally where you say, "Hey, Shawna, what did you think?" And so,
what did you think?
Oh, wow! I don't even know how I would answer that. It's such a surprise. This is okay. I love the way that God and His loving Holy Spirit speaks to each of us individually as well as corporately, right? Because as a community, we heard the sermon, many of us together on Sunday and online, and then others, at different times. And so, yes, there is this corporate learning moment, but then there's also these personal individual learning moments. And to me, I know we're in the camp of talking about the transcendence of God, but to me, this is also very personal. And so I say all of that to say that for me, and I don't think that this was the intent necessarily of this sermon, but for me, it was really healing of something in my spiritual life and my spiritual background that I didn't realize I needed healing for or from. And it was just like when your eyes are opened, even Greg said at one point in the sermon, he's like, he was seeing something unlike he had ever seen it before. And I don't know if I'm just daft or but I was seeing something that I hadn't seen before. And through seeing that, I felt just this healing come over my heart, which I just thought was beautiful. That doesn't mean that I fully understand and know what all that will be when we talk about entering into that throne room, when we talk about dancing forever with God and what all that looks like. When we talk about when we talk about anchoring our hope in that, that takes a lot of faith, because honestly, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like and what that's going to be. When we say, don't hold on too tightly to anything of this world because it's all perishable, hold things loosely, and knowing that as we give those over to God, that we are in turn blessed. That takes a lot of faith, because we don't know with certainty what all that will look like. And so for some, that might be difficult to do, because people like to kind of have things in a nice, neat box. And for others, you're going to be okay with just rolling on the train of faith, rolling on down the river. And that's okay too. So I'm kind of rambling, but all of that to say, I don't have all the answers. This sense of healing and like, this makes sense. Although that was very welcoming for me, and I felt like it was very, I don't know, it was endearing. It was just a great moment for me, and I feel like it was really a powerful moment in my walk with the Lord. It doesn't mean I have all the answers, but I'm okay with that because I continue to trust the character of God that is revealed through Jesus, the character of God that I feel like has been revealed to me personally through brothers and sisters within the community and a variety of other things, nature and relationships and blessings and all of that. And so, yeah, I'm trusting in that. And that does allow me to do his number 3, stay anchored in hope, because there are a lot of things. If I just look around the corner, the proverbial corner of time, there are a lot of things coming or possibly coming my way, our way, society's way, humanity's way, that could be kind of scary. And so it behooves me to remember to stay anchored in hope. And I really appreciate that. So for me, this was like a really nice wrap up. I know we're not done. Like we said, we're just in chapter 4 and kind of starting to lean into chapter 5. And so there's more to come, but it really felt like a nice bow on the last couple of weeks of talking about these portion of passages.
Yeah, no, that's good. For me, it's like this stuff, like I love Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
And I really do think, in fact, what I've often said is I said, like, Ecclesiastes, if you read Ecclesiastes, it reads like a Metallica album. I mean, it is so, it's beautiful, but there's like this poetic darkness to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the writer of Ecclesiastes, who, I think traditionally people have thought it's Solomon, but the writer, he kind of talks about this sermon that this is really Ecclesiastes, this whole sermon, because he argues that all of this stuff in the world is meaningless, and everything meaningless, says the teacher, all is meaningless, and everything that people do, that they make such a big deal about in the world, that is vanity. It's more about them than anything else, but what he says is that the one thing that is meaningful in this entire world is seeking God and obeying his commandments. And so the writer of Solomon, before Jesus, before the prophets, before all of this, tapped into this reality that this is all going to rot. There's got to be something everlasting behind it. There's got to be something that sustains this. And that is the only thing that is meaningful in any ultimate sort of way. Any meaning we find here is always going to be temporary and short term. But our heart longs for something that's more eternal. And I think that is so awesome.
Yeah, it is so awesome and so encouraging. And so I guess my question is, like, how can we continue to encourage folks? Because again, we know it could sound very like Pollyanna, everything's fine. But the reality is we experience things that aren't fine. Mm-hmm. We experience things that aren't okay. Yeah. There is literal death and decay around us. In every sense of the word. So, and it's not just pie in the sky wishful thinking when we say, like, we have a hope and there is more to this. And this isn't what's eternal, but we are striving to what's eternal. That can all sound very like glory, pie in the sky. But, and I don't know how to like say to someone, no, it's real and it's good and it's helpful. And so I don't know, how do you answer that question for people who maybe are struggling with grappling with this idea of there is more, there is a hope, there is, this around us is not forever, but there is a forever that we're striving toward that is more glorious than we could even imagine.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. For me, I mean, it really comes down to, do you believe it? And I think the criticism about the Pollyanna kind of pie in the sky stuff is sort of similar to this idea that faith or religion is a crutch. It's a crutch that we lean on in a really harsh world. And it's this lie we tell ourselves to comfort ourselves in a world that we don't like, or in a world that is violent and there's death and stuff like that. a couple things I'd say about that is the first thing is that accusation itself acknowledges the hopelessness in the world. If the world
Mhm.
wasn't hopeless, no one would need a crutch. And certainly not 98.5% of the world who has a religion. That many people wouldn't need a crutch unless the world itself didn't offer any ultimate hope. And so the fact that so many people need this supposed crutch is an indicator that the premise of Greg's sermon this weekend, the premise, the foundation of Ecclesiastes, uh, is right. There is no inherent hope here. And so then the next question is okay, well, what hope do we have? And that's, I think, where arguments like some of the Thomistic arguments about, everything in this world is contingent, and yet you can't have everything be contingent. There has to be a necessary thing, and that necessary thing is God. And then you have the consciousness argument that I've shared, which I think is probably my favorite argument, that there's got to be something more than matter. And then you've got the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15 that if the resurrection didn't happen, then everything that we're doing here is meaningless. It's pointless. Woe is us for wasting our lives on this if the resurrection didn't happen. So finding evidence to believe in the resurrection seems to be the direction that Paul encourages us to go. And I think that if you don't really believe those things, well, of course, you're not going to be fed by these teachings. It's not a comforting story. It's a life-changing, life-grounding reality. If you don't believe in the reality, then it's not going to change your life, and it's not going to ground you. And so you really have to actually believe that it's true, because really the story itself is part of why I love the Bible so much is that it embraces the ick. It embraces the suckiness of the world. It doesn't paint a rosy picture. It has good news, but it's good news wrapped in reality that resonates with us, and it speaks to our hearts. We're a brokenhearted people, and the Bible has a lot of brokenhearted stories, and through that brokenheartedness, you find the ultimate source of healing and the ultimate source of hope. So I don't know if that answers anything, but there's a lot of words in there.
No, I thought that was great. Many words. No, that was great. It made me think of something I think you and I have talked about before, and I think you're the one who brought it up, talking about, like, honestly, worst marketing job ever. Like, if this was all just, a bill of goods that was trying to be sold, I don't know that we would include all the crap and all the mess and all the ugliness. And so, it is beauty. It is hope, but it's wrapped very much in reality that is quite ugly at times. And so, And that's where I just keep coming back to, like, there does come a point where you just have to just have faith to believe. So you can think it through. I think that's important. Ask questions. I think that's important. Wrestle. That's important. But then ultimately, there just comes a point where you believe or you choose not to believe, and that's something everyone has to grapple with. So for sure. We had a good comment, I believe, on one of our socials or something in response to this sermon. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, Michelle said this, and I think she really kind of captured the sermon really well. I think she's right about this. She said, I feel like a lifetime of spiritual journeying came together with this sermon. And I think there's something to that. And for me, at least, I've often started my, I don't know how to say this. For me, the stuff that Greg is talking about here, from the very beginning of my faith, has been about this, and this has sort of been the grounding of my own faith. I remember reading or writing a letter to my cousin, just talking about how there doesn't seem to be any meaningful purpose in the world, and this is before I was a believer. And I just wrote this letter saying, like, why work? Why is everybody working so hard? Everyone is just busting their butt for what? So that they can get a job. I mean, this is when I was a student, so they can get a job. Well, what reward is that? Because now you just have to bust your butt there for what? So you can get a nice house. I mean, that you can enjoy for 10 hours a week. I mean, all of that work just for something that you can enjoy for 10 hours a week. And it just, okay. So then maybe, back then, of course, I was like, well, maybe sex is what the ultimate purpose is. But even that, it's like, well, it's just a dopaminergic, high is all it is. And then it goes away. And then you have to like re-find it again. And it's this treadmill on and on and on. And so that from the beginning is like, in my faith, is like, this place doesn't offer anything that has any ultimate purpose or meaning. That's the same thing that Ecclesiastes is saying. That's the same thing that Greg is saying here. And so this idea of a spiritual journey in a lifetime, boy, that really resonates with my own experience as well. So I like that comment.
And so I love that comment, and I love you unpacking that a little bit. And so just I want people to really grasp what you were saying there. So when you say that it was leading to this, can you talk about what the this is, like what you mean by the this?
Yeah. Well, I think what my heart, for me, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for Greg, but for me, I felt like my heart, and I couldn't articulate this part of it at that time when I was younger. I could just recognize the futility and the emptiness of the treadmill world. But looking back on it now, what I see is that my heart was longing for something permanent. My heart was longing for some ultimate foundation. And so that those initial existential cries that I had, that was just me calling out for this need. That was just me recognizing that there's something in me that's not fed here in this world. And that's sort of, for me at least, what pushed me into searching for something more ultimate. And I've heard that sort of testimony from a lot of people, that, people call it a God-shaped hole and things like that, that only God can fill and things like that. And I think that there's something very right about that. And it definitely resonates with my experience seeking God in my journey. So, and then finding that, hey, this idea that everything here is temporary and contingent, well, that implies that there has to be something that's not contingent. And then you have the resurrection, which is just this profoundly powerful event that happened. For me, it all kind of comes together and hangs together in a way that fills that initial longing in a way that nothing else in the world has, for me at least. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I'm smiling because I thank you, because as is per the case, you never know where we're going to go, what questions I'm going to ask you. So thank you. You always are a good sport. But the reason why I wanted you to kind of drill into that a little bit is because I suspect that there are so many that are going to resonate with that very thought, what you just shared. That when I know you said it's for you, but I think there are going to be many people that are going to resonate with that, and that longing for something permanent, and what we're discovering all together and have been on this journey to discover is that something permanent is what we can again anchor our hope in, and that is the living God and the love that he has for us and for others, and all of it, for nature, for animal kingdom, for all of it, and that is just really hopeful. The uncreated creator, is that correct? No, is that right?
Okay. Yeah, that's I've heard that for sure.
Yeah. So just like he always was, always is, will always be. And so that feels a bit more substantial than all of this, which will in some way or another fade away. And so thank you. I think that was really helpful. And I do believe a lot of people will resonate with it. And I think this is a great place, unless you have some other pearls of wisdom to share that are not of nugget nature. I think this is a great place to transition into, say it with me now.
Nugget time.
Nugget time. Very nice. Do you want to go nugget 1 or nugget 2?
Mine could go either way. It's a shorty. It's a quickie.
Mine's a shorty as well.
Okay. I will go first.
Well, how about, okay, sounds good.
Should I flip a coin?
Do you
I
have a
don't think I
coin
have any
handy?
coins. I
Okay.
have I
Well,
have
then
this.
what do you
Okay.
have? What is that? Okay, flip
The
it.
bottle cap. So,
Okay.
all right. So, this is tails, the empty side, and
Okay.
then the full
Uh-huh.
side is heads. So,
And
I'm tails, you're heads.
okay.
Oh, I'm going first. Tails.
Okay, good. We're very, very professional, very methodic. We know
Yes.
what we got going on here. Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to share is something that we've used in sermons before because it's just so beautiful and it just really captures this part of Greg's sermon about the world and the fact that nothing here is permanent. Everything is going to die away. And this is Robert Frost. Nothing gold can stay. And it goes like
Oh,
this.
good old Bobby.
Nature's, yeah, right. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf. So Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay. That
I
is
love it.
my nugget.
Very nice. Very nice. I listen to you so much, Dan, that I believe that poem has made an appearance on the MuseCast before, somewhere in our
Mhm.
4-year history together. So
Yep,
I love it.
it
Good
has.
job. My nugget is pretty short as well, and it is. I just want to again take us back to that exercise that Greg led us through at the end of the sermon, and I feel like if you didn't have proper time or space to really sit and go through that experience, my encouragement is to do so, because I do believe that as you allow the Spirit to speak to your heart, it can become a bit more clear as to what it is in your life that you maybe are holding on tightly to, that you are maybe trying to get fed from that maybe the things that you consider to be your treasures. And the thing for me that I have rediscovered through this is that whenever we are asked to hold things loosely and to give them up, it's not out of anger, it's not out of some sort of weird jealousy thing that God has. And it's not that. It's very loving. Like, I don't believe that the Lord would allow us to love and be happy and joyful about things in our life just to snatch them away without intent or purpose. And so I think we can trust, again, the character of God, to know that as we are releasing these things to Him, He is flowing back to us in love. And so my encouragement, my nugget is just take time and go through this exercise. And if it was really meaningful for you when we did it together, awesome. Like, maybe find a time to do that again and just allow the Lord to continue to speak to your heart about places, areas, situations in which maybe you have been hanging on to treasures here. And just trust that when you give things up, it's going to be okay, and it's going to be good, and it's not gonna be painful. I mean, never mind. It's going to get too long. It might hurt a bit because you enjoy it, but it's not for your bad. It is for your good, and it is a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. And so, yeah. Meh.
What is that? What is me? Is it?
I haven't had breakfast yet, so I think I need to eat.
Yeah.
I'm like a baby. I'm off my feeding schedule.
I think you're good. So no, that's good. Well, I'm not gonna say any names, but we had a few people who on staff who were really moved by that exercise, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I need to take your advice because I think I was furiously writing notes and trying to
Yeah.
kind of do my summary during the sermon, and I probably didn't spend as much attention on the exercise as I should have,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that needs to be remedied. So I should probably take your advice for sure.
I like it. I like it. When I can influence Dan Kent, we know it's a good show. Well, thank you all for tuning in. And remember, comments, questions, emojis, you can send them in to musecast@whchurch.org. Dan showed you right there. And we look forward to chatting 4 p.m. Central on the YouTubes. And hey, it's not over. Guess what? We've got much more revelation to come. So make sure you tune in this weekend to hear, just someone. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. But I think you'll be really blessed by it. So take care. Have a wonderful week. Blessings, everyone.